Hello and welcome to this short video about deep water and its campaign, Flooding is Shit. In this talk, I'll give a brief introduction to deep water, then how climate change is causing extreme weather events, particularly flooding in the UK, followed by an explanation of how a combined sewer system works, its effects on our waterways, and finally, why flooding is shit. Deep Water began as an outreach group in the Midlands. Its aims are to make the connection between the climate and ecological emergency and more frequent and extreme weather events, and in particular flooding. Deep Water developed a talk which proved so effective they spread across the UK. And then, after a series of campaigns and actions, they began reaching groups internationally. So what is behind our increased and more frequently intense rainfall? Well, the intensity of rainfall depends on how much water the air can hold at any given time. Rising air temperatures increase the evaporation rate, so our oceans release more water vapour into the air. And air can hold up to 7% more moisture for every 1 degree centigrade of temperature rise. So as our temperatures go up, our flooding will get worse. We're now going to watch a short video on recent floods in Germany and around the world.
July 2021. After severe rainfall, the Ahr Valley in western Germany was hit by an enormous flood. Water gushed through the villages, killing over 100 people and damaging thousands of houses. Extreme weather events are occurring more frequently all over the world, not just in Germany. Rising sea levels and heavy rainfall cause devastating floods.
From now on, every day, somewhere in the world, we will have an extreme weather event, unprecedented weather event like we never had before.
This map shows the areas of England that are at risk from river and tidal flooding. Apologies for not being able to show Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, but we can't find a comparative map. But the key thing to remember is any location with a largely impervious surface, such as an urban area, is at risk from flash flooding. Flooding has always been an occasional part of life in the areas shown on the map, but as you've just heard, experts warn that climate change is worsening the situation. More than 3,400 of England's high-consequence flood control measures, in other words, those defined as where there is a high risk to life and property if they fail, were judged to be in such bad condition they were almost useless. And that statement is from the Environment Agency. The most unpredictable and dangerous type of flooding is flash flooding. In the picture on the left, you can see that natural ground cover can allow 25% of rain to sink into the topsoil, 25% into the deep aquifers and water table, 40% evaporates or is drawn into trees and transpired, and only 10% forms runoff and travels to our drainage systems. But in built-up areas shown on the right, where 75 to 100% of the surface is impervious, only 15% is drawn into the ground, 30% evaporates, and 55% will run off. And that's what overwhelms our drainage systems and causes flash floods. Here's a short video showing recent flash flooding in Edinburgh.
Ominous-looking clouds over Glasgow yesterday, and the rain that fell from them caused widespread disruption. In Edinburgh, many streets were flooded. There were tricky journeys for drivers and pedestrians. The train line between Edinburgh Waverley and Haymarket Station had to be closed. St James Quarter Shopping Centre only opened last month. Naturally ventilated, it's deliberately designed to allow some rain to get in, but not this much. Parts had to be cordoned off for safety reasons. Many parts of the UK experienced heavy rainfall yesterday. Sunday shopping, for some, turned out to be a rather soggy experience.
I'll give you a few moments to read this explanation of how a combined sewer system works. Treating wastewater removes about 90% of microplastics, but researchers at the University of Manchester found that the poor management of untreated wastewater and raw sewage by water companies was the main source of microplastic pollution in the UK's rivers. The presence of high levels of microplastics on the riverbed suggested that water companies were also spilling raw effluent during dry spells, which is against UK and EU regulations. And when you add to this industrial, agricultural and urban runoffs, as well as pollution from roads, which contain toxic metals and hydrocarbons found in fuel, and other pollutants washed into water, they all pose a significant threat to river health. Road runoff can carry over 300 pollutants, causing short and long-term damage, including killing fish, and even discolouring water, turning the river water black in areas of heavy traffic. By their own confession, water companies say they dumped untreated sewage into English water bodies more than 400,000 times in 2020, and did the same again last year in 2021. And that totalled about 3.1 million hours of sewage being dumped into rivers. As shocking as that seems, you can safely assume this figure grossly underplays the true picture, because not all sewage discharges are recorded, and because the sector is allowed to self-report its spills. This is a practice that begs to be abused. In the passage of a recent Environment Bill, the House of Lords tried to strengthen proposals for greater control over sewage discharges, but they were defeated in the Commons, 268 votes to 204, on the advice of George Eustice, the Environment Secretary. We're now going to watch a short video from Windrush, WASP. WASP stands for Windrush Against Sewage Pollution. The River Windrush is a tributary of the Thames in Gloucestershire. You may wish to adjust your volume as the sound is quite quiet.
If you don't ever have to see sewage fungus, don't bother, because it's disgusting. It's like a kind of grey-brown jelly that coated everything in that brook. It's shocking. What's happened is they've allowed this to degrade over so many years that now the problem is so big. Some people say it's too big to tackle, and we say it's too big to ignore. The hours that the water companies have been spilling untreated sewage are shocking. And it's been put out to the public that this happens only in rare occasions for short periods of time, and it's an emergency to stop it flooding into their homes. But the reality is it's far more extensive. It's happening in dry weather, and it will be ignored almost every time. The tiny fraction of prosecutions from the huge number of offences means that it's no form of deterrent.
Does somebody not govern this? I mean, it's got to be against the law.
We say it is against the law. The water company wants to argue that point. The Environment Agency says that type of event was against the law, but they're reluctant to go up against the industry. Even 30 years after privatization, they're still not in control. In fact, the industry is quite clearly now pretty much taken over its own regulation. It's in the industry's interest to cut corners. They call it sweating the assets, and it means you don't fix anything. The industry as a whole, I believe, roughly has made 58 billion since the start of privatization. Bearing in mind this comes from bill payers, it just looks like an utter failure. People have had enough. They can see it happening. They know that there's something really badly wrong. Something is amiss, and they have to take it into their own hands.
So I have this crazy fear of water.
Okay.
Really, it's a phobia, actually. Big deal for me to get into the Thames. In this day and age, the last thing I ever thought I would need to be fearful for in the Thames was swimming in somebody's poo.
Absolutely. When I was a kid wandering around streams and I was fishing, I was just looking at stuff. We'd come across beautiful places. No one thought to take photographs. No one thought, I better photograph this. One day it's going to be gone, did they? Suddenly, we didn't even see it happening. But you'd go back to places that you went as a kid and think, hang on a minute, what's happened here? Many young people that I meet now that are in the water have never seen it in any other state.
Alex, weren't you saying that you had interviewed a man in his 70s that you... Yes. And he used to fly fish when he was younger.
Yeah, when he was my age, when he was 13, 14. On the Windrush. What he said about how the river used to be, how it used to be gin clear, you'd see every pebble on the bottom. What he said about that kind of started to scare me, because I started thinking, okay, what if my generation grows up without realizing what it used to be like, and then we'll just grow up and accept that that's how a river is, and this problem will never be fixed.
So if an individual's just at home watching a video, what can they do? I mean, what is the most important thing and the most impactful thing that they can do?
I think the greatest thing they can do is know, because when you get a lot of people that know about this and care enough so that if there's a petition or it becomes a voting issue, that they understand that things aren't great, things are not how they're being portrayed, then they can make their views known to their MPs and their councillors and make this an issue that politicians care about, because then we start to see change. Complain to the water companies and just be aware of your surroundings.
When we all succeed, can the rivers ever look like they did before?
Well, the great thing about rivers is they're moving. Once you stop polluting a river, you will see recovery quite quickly, because you're giving life clean water, and you'll be amazed. People need to understand that life will change really rapidly for the better if you stop killing it, stop polluting it.
That is just one example of what's happening all over the country. So, here is a UK map of water and sewerage companies, and their boundaries are the ones with the white outline. The water-only companies are boundaried in green. The water and sewerage companies are the ones responsible for the combined sewage overflows and the pollution of our rivers and waterways. So, which company do you pay your water rates to destroy our rivers? Over to you.